Hello and welcome back to Through the Eyes of Enji, where we're watching 100 films in 1 year to raise some money for We Are With You and the Shawbury Village Players. Now, We Are With You is a confidential service for young people and families affected by drugs and alcohol in Shropshire. Their work includes information, support and advice about drugs and alcohol, one-to-one support, group work, a parent-carer helpline, help to make decisions about lifestyle, links to other services, early intervention, and harm reduction. Now, the Shawbury Village Players, well, if you've known me for any length of time, you'll probably know who the Shawbury Village Players are. They are a community theatre group operating out of, funnily enough, Shawbury, putting on murder mysteries, Shakespeare, pantomimes, you name it, we've probably done it. Now, if you have had some issues with your mental health, like I have over the last few years, then you might understand the impact that losing something like the Shawbury Village Players would have, both on myself and on the community. So please, have a think about it. Please, sponsor me a few quid, nominate a few films. We are 69% of the way there, and I've still got a lot of films to go through. Right, let's do this. Let's talk about Batman and Robin. Released in 1997, directed by Joel Schumacher, written by Akiva Goldsman, based on characters by Bob Kane. Starred George Clooney as Bruce Wayne and Batman, Chris O'Donnell as Dick Grayson and Robin, Alicia Silverstone as Barbara Wilson and Batgirl, Uma Thurman as Pamela Isley and Poison Ivy, and of course Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze and Dr. Victor Freeze. Oh, Lord in heaven, where the hell do you even start with this one? Okay, so it's not that I don't have thoughts about Batman and Robin. I have plenty. But the struggle I've had with writing this review has been how to pick any fresh meat off the skeleton that is the corpse of Batman and Robin. And I was really unsure how to even approach this review, because people have fought over Batman and Robin right from when it first came out in '97 about how bad it is, and have covered pretty much all of the subjects that I could possibly cover. Sorry, I'm going to drink during this review because I've got a lot of talking to do. Anyway, everyone knows the stories of the director and the cast apologising for the film, bloated budget, nipples on the bat-suit, and how the film was incredibly camp and it ruined Batman. No, it didn't. No, that's not fair. Let's let's talk quickly about that. No, it didn't ruin Batman thing, because that's a slightly unfair comment from me, because that is just very much my opinion. Because there's a view by many fans of Batman that the character couldn't be taken seriously in the Adam West 1960s TV show and some of the earlier comics that were bright, colourful, and full of silly gadgets. Much like 1960s James Bond, actually, now I come to think about it. Anyway, a lot of fans will credit Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns in 1986 for saving the character and turning him into the darker, more broody character that Batman is better known for today. I mean, you might not be aware that when Batman was first introduced in 1939, he did actually use guns and he did kill people. I mean, that was scaled back as the years went on. You could probably point at the Comic Code Authority in 1954 as being part of the reason, but you could also say that Robin being introduced in 1940 in order for the comic to appeal to a younger audience whose fathers had got left home to go and fight in the Second World War. But round about the time the Adam West TV show was coming in the 1960s, there were a lot of Batman fans who were clamouring for the dark and gritty Batman to come back. And DC did did take notice of this, and a turning point when you look at it seems to be in about 1971, when a new villain was introduced, which was Ra's al Ghul. And it really sunk in 1973 when a couple of the writers working on Batman decided to resurrect an old villain and give him a bit more of a darker edge, and that character was the Joker. We can see how that went. You can understand the move back from having these grim villains who Batman was killing, and they were trying to kill him, moving to more colourful and over-the-top villains with silly gadgets and strapping our heroes to giant lunch trays. I'm looking at you once, Riddler. I'm looking at you twice, Penguin. When Robin was introduced in 1940, as writers didn't want to be putting a child in in life or death situations, especially when it's a child that the audience is supposed to relate to. And that was something I definitely had in mind while I was watching Batman and Robin. And also thinking about Batman Forever as well, when they introduced Robin, and wondered if there was some kind of correlation there. I mean, I'm probably wrong. A bit more history for you here. Whilst 1989's Batman was a massive hit for Warner Brothers, who at this point owned the rights to all of the DC characters, Batman was quite possibly one of the most influential films ever made. I mean, if you think about it, it was a massively successful blockbuster based on a comic book character, and it was probably the first successful one apart from Superman back in the 70s. But I think Superman was a massive cultural icon before that, whereas Batman, not quite so much. I mean, the impact of 89's Batman meant that the creators of Batman the Animated Series were given a lot more freedom with the source material than they would have originally. And it also, of course, launched Tim Burton, for better or worse. And it might actually have been a major cause of the comic book industry's bubble and burst in the 90s. So when Batman Returns was released, there was a major public backlash against Warner Brothers for making the film aimed too much at adults, and for causing either nightmares with Danny DeVito's Penguin, or with Michelle Pfeiffer gave a lot of young people a violent dropkick into puberty when they first saw that costume for the first time. So the studio decided to get in a new director to take over the reins of the franchise and picked up Joel Schumacher. Well, Joel Schumacher was, unlike Tim Burton, was a big fan of Batman, and originally wanted to do a film version of the classic comic Year One. When that was considered too dark, nevertheless, Schumacher jumped straight in to make Batman movie more colourful, more family-friendly, and inject his own style, which didn't work in Batman Forever and really didn't work in Batman and Robin. So let's clear up a few obvious points, because we're actually getting on to me talking about the film now, nearly 10 minutes into this review, which will be quite long, I think. Okay, so Batman and Robin isn't a good film. It's got a horrible script, the story doesn't make much sense, characters are introduced and then forgotten, or given nothing to do. Let's be honest, Pat Hingle's a fine actor, but he's always been a bad choice for Commissioner Gordon. And much like all the other films in this series, Batman becomes a side character in a film with his name on the tin, and the narrative is driven by the villains. And just out of interest, Batman villains are supposed to be reflections of Batman's character, right? What part of his character is Mr. Freeze in this film supposed to be? Just wondering. And, you know, most of the people in the film look just lost or bored. There's scenes in Batman and Robin where the cast just kind of stand around looking at each other, waiting for the film to end. You know, all that being said, the film's not the toxic oil spill it's often painted as. And if you are one of those fans who feel this film was a total portrayal of your beloved Dark Knight, well, then, to be honest, you're probably not going to like what I'm about to cover. You may just want to stop the video now, because apart from me giving some faint praise to Batman and Robin, I'm probably going to be confronting a rather uncomfortable truth for some people. You know what, let's do that first. So, Joel Schumacher was, at the time, one of the few openly gay filmmakers in Hollywood. And while that doesn't matter half a glass of piss, in the grand scheme of things, when you watch Batman and Robin again, and look at the way the film's shot with its focus on the masculine form, and the statues in the city, which must have just grown out the ground when Tim Burton left the project. Did he leave after Batman? Yes, after Burton left the project after Batman Forever. And this shouldn't matter. This doesn't matter at half a damn. The film is incredibly camp and doesn't just kind of accept the fact it's camp. It absolutely fucking flaunts it. I've watched a production of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is more restrained than Poison Ivy's entrance dressed as a gorilla. Barbarella, Showgirls haven't got shit on that scene. And just so we're clear, camp is an aesthetic style and sensibility that regards something as appealing because of its bad taste and ironic value. Because something's camp doesn't mean that characters are gay. That is a totally ludicrous sentence, but that's what fans of Batman were saying in 1997. They hated the idea that their heterosexual male icon was being made to look gay. If you spend time playing shooters online with teenage boys, it's like listening to a choir sing the most horrific, obscene, racist and homophobic things that you'll ever hear. And the rage that some of these teenagers have when someone questions their sexuality raises red flags when you think that they were the target audience for the Batman films. And when you look at those, you remember those 2 points, you can see a lot of the resentment and hatred of the film that is built up over time. You can see the egg of that. I remember the backlash against Batman and Robin. And with the possible exceptions of the horrific racism that was aimed at The Last Jedi by the Star Wars fan base, and the vile hatred against the Phantom Menace, were these 3 things were moments when I felt ashamed of something I love. And it was just made that much worse because this was the beginning of geek internet culture and the rise of sites like Ain't It Cool News, created by that slobbering gorilla who I'm not going to get the dignity of naming. Now, these sites were dominating headlines and making real waves in the industry because Joel Schumacher and other producers on Batman and Robin went public, placing the blame of poor box office performance on these websites because of their leaks and their negative coverage for this and for Speed 2 around about the same time. But the real issue was that all these websites had unedited comments that these fucking apes got together and were able to share these horrific homophobic views behind the anonymity that comes from being on a chat room where you don't have to reveal your name. And it's just toxic and poisoning to the soul, and I hate it so goddamn much. Anyway, I digress. Let's go back to talking about the film. I think if you were going to boil down the many, many elements of Batman and Robin and try and find a core reason why the film simply doesn't work, the one that I think everyone is fully aware of and always comes to mind for me is the film comes across more as being a toy commercial than it does actually a film. And if Batman Forever was a simple exercise in franchise management, I've got to bring it up like I always do, Batman Forever. That's a seriously ballsy fucking title. Gotta appreciate that. Anyway, so if Batman Forever was franchise management, this one was very much to sell toys and make money. But, you know, some of the people in the film do seem to be having a lot of fun. And there's stories that Joel Schumacher, before each take, would go, remember everybody, we're making a cartoon. Now, I don't know if that's entirely true, because if he did say that, the only person who was listening was Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is quite clearly having an absolute ball as Mr. Freeze. And the guy had an acting coach. He had an acting coach for this film, and that always makes me smile. Uma Thurman chews the scenery to pieces and is really enjoying playing such an over-the-top character who might have been... Poison Ivy exemplifies all of the camp in this film. When she turns up in that gorilla costume, it just blows my mind every time I watch it. But George Clooney... Oh, poor George Clooney. He just looks utterly lost through the film. And Chris O'Donnell, yeah, he's bad. He's just terrible. He didn't really have much of a career after this. And for that, we are eternally grateful. Watching the film again for this review, I was struck quite early on by how much of a B-movie the film feels like when we see Dr. Pamela Isley before she becomes Poison Ivy, and she's working with this mad scientist played by John Glover. And it felt like the beginning of a great Batman story. An evil scientist creates a monster. The monster goes on the rampage. Batman has to put the puzzle pieces together, being the world's greatest detective after all, to find the laboratory, confront the scientist, analyse the research, and then finally confront the monster with all the gadgets he needs to hand, because Batman. And, you know, you could make the mad scientist like the Riddler or something, and that's fine. And you can have a secondary villain as well who causing problems for Batman. You know, someone low-key or not that used that much. So you have, like, the Mad Hatter or something like that, because I love me some Mad Hatter. And there's a Batman story. And my notes at this point just say, talk about Bane. This isn't Bane. Bane was never that great a character anyway. He was only really brought in for one storyline, which was... here it is. Which was, for this one, Nightfall. He looks ridiculous. To come in and do that storyline, that was it. And whilst I know they mention Venom in Batman and Robin, they very specifically say, by using the toxic formula I've created called Venom, to give him super strength. It's still, just like Danny DeVito isn't really the Penguin, this isn't Bane. Now, I do wonder why there is less hatred aimed at Avika Goldsman's script for Batman and Robin rather than all of the hatred being aimed very specifically at Joel Schumacher. I did do my research for this review, and I combed through an awful lot of old reviews, and message boards for comments around the film, and there's awful lot of fuck Schumacher for making Batman gay. I hate campy Batman, and rah, nipples on the Batsuit. Why? But I want them on Batgirl. Yum. Depressingly, those are all actual quotes. So, the general opinion of pre-2015-ish internet posts just say the film's bad. They don't give any supporting argument. But the dialogue wasn't written by Joel Schumacher. It was written by the guy who wrote A Beautiful Mind. So it's not written. We're not dealing with a talentless hack like David Goyer. And thinking about it, yeah, the script is terrible, and it doesn't make sense, and the costumes mostly look kind of ridiculous. But this isn't the worst superhero film that I've ever seen. Have you checked out Elektra, Steel, Green Lantern, or Fan Stick recently? The film's silly and campy, and it's no more silly and campy than Flash Gordon is, or Street Fighter, or Mortal Kombat, and those are referred to as camp classics. And I just feel like the really pinpointed hatred that's poured on Batman and Robin, I can only ascertain that it comes with the reasons I've mentioned before for a lot of people. And again, I've got to emphasize that this isn't a good film, and I'm not advocating anyone watch it. And I was thinking, whilst I was watching the motorcycle chase sequence, which has a gang of guys dressed up as the characters from The Clockwork Orange, which I'd never noticed before, that it's boring and it uses its time badly, and it's a really not a good film, but I don't hate it. I couldn't work myself up in a rage about it. And the impact of Batman and Robin can't be ignored, because if 1989 Batman kick-started the current superhero trend, then Batman and Robin not being the massive financial success that Batman Forever was, not only put the franchise on ice for 6 years, but it meant that it led to the 1-2-3 punch of Blade, X-Men, and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, which was the jolt that raised the superhero genre from the grave. So remembering the film's not good, the constant vile hatred of this film for a lot of people seems to come from a much darker place. And it's something I used to consider, but having done the research for this review, I'm far more certain of it now. And frankly, some of the stuff I read researching this review made me want to take a very long cold shower. And then but at the same time, there's some really uncomfortable stuff in the film. I mean, the auction scene is old white millionaires bidding on women like it's like a slave auction. And that's the scene with the fucking credit card, with Never Leave the Cave without it. And that scene rather sets the tone for the rest of the film so strongly, because it's a scene with a Batman credit card, and the credit card isn't the most out there thing in the scene. You know, if the opening of Spider-Man 2 sets the tone for the film, oh god, I've got to watch Spider-Man 2 at some point, haven't I? If that scene sets the tone, then certainly the auction scene and the initial fight with Mr. Freeze, with him as trying to escape into space for reasons that are never explained, but hey, Batman and Robin, it sets the tone that what's to come, and what's to come is a violent volley of dumb. In summary, Batman and Robin's bad. It's a really bad film. It's dumb, it's boring, and it doesn't make much sense. And I can't recommend it. But what I would recommend is to think about why you hate Batman and Robin so much. Maybe dial that hatred back a bit, because the film is bad. Let's just let the corpse rest. And let's just let this go and move on. Because I think I speak for a lot of folk when I say I've been talking now for nearly half an hour. And I'm sick of Batman and Robin. I've been thinking about it all week. And I'm just tired. And doing the research and thinking about this so much just bummed me out. I'm not happy or sad or have any affection like that towards the film. I just felt numb. But Arnie's pretty fucking good in it. How about we talk about something else? Let's watch something else. Okay. Next up, we have... I don't know why I have a blank one in there. Try that again. It's another one from Colin. Next time, we're doing 2014's Pride. I have no idea what it's like. I have never seen Pride, but I'm looking forward to this one. So thank you again for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I am locking the comments down on this one, because when people talk about Batman and Robin on YouTube, then some people tend to get angry and make a lot of comments. Because this is a public video, I'm just going to switch the comments off to avoid that. I have done that game before. So thanks for watching. I will be back in a week's time to watch Pride. And then the week after that, it's Christmas time. So I'm watching the only Christmas list. Christmas list? I'm watching the only Christmas film that I've been nominated. So we'll be doing, after Pride, we'll be doing The Miracle on 34th Street. So thanks for watching. Like and share this video. Subscribe so you get up notification when I put more out. And please do consider sponsoring me a bit. If you're stuck with me for another 10 months, might as well get me to something to talk about, something you like. Thank you for watching.